So today we are going to talk about what it was like and what it took for me to grow into being a dominant. And what I want to really show and share in this conversation is what it was like for me, like what I had to change inside of me in order to show up as a dominant when I had been showing up as something else for our whole relationship. And then from your perspective, what did you witness in that, in the old version of me shifting into who I had to become? Because I think one of the things that gets overlooked in dominant submissive relationships quite a bit is the amount of work it takes for the dominant to really be a healthy, strong leader. It's not as easy as it maybe is cracked up to be in guys' heads. Because it's not just about getting to boss your submissive around and tell her what to do all day. And it's not about just being able to be in charge so that none of the things that make me uncomfortable ever have to get looked at.
I do think that's a big draw for some.
I know it is. And it's a temptation too.
I can see that.
When you do have a lot of power and authority in a relationship, it's pretty easy and I think maybe even natural to want to use that to make your life as good as you can make it. And if you don't understand what it really takes to make your life as good as it can be, the unconsciousness will really kick in and you'll just use that power to like shut your submissive down so she can't challenge you, so you don't have to face your discomfort with being challenged, for example.
Yeah, I think that's a natural just response for a man who's maybe emotionally unaware or ungrounded or just
emotionally immature.
Yeah.
And that's really one of the first things that had to shift for me in being a dominant, because it didn't work for me just to boss you around. That's not what I wanted, and you've never been the type to just, as much as you like to follow, as soon as there were expectations for you to follow, like that didn't really go well.
No, but I'd like to give a side note, because before you were a natural leader, and I saw that in you. Like you naturally would rise to the occasion and take charge, and you did that in business and all of the other groups that you were in, and like there was that natural, I wouldn't have called it dominance back then, but leadership, with an ability to see what needed to be done. And like I witnessed that in you in business, the business setting.
Yeah, and I always did have a confidence that if, in my own abilities, in my own capability, like if people go where I want to go, things are going to work out just fine.
And that was displayed. Like it shown through. Like, people naturally would follow you, not just me. And so you have a gift there.
And it is something that fucks with a guy's head when you move into dominance in a relationship, because of how we perceive, like, every person's going to perceive what dominance is and what it means differently.
Yes. I didn't have any perception.
Right. You didn't really know what any of this was.
Lucky for you. Maybe.
I think that could go both ways, but one of the big risks or challenges in stepping into dominance as a role in this marriage and in this relationship is, if I'm trying to play the part of a dominant, like I'm trying to play that role, whatever I perceive that role to be is then going to influence how I show up, versus that natural leadership and just bringing that into the relationship. If I think, well, I'm a dominant, therefore now I have to punish you every time that you don't do what I tell you to do.
Right.
And then I start doing that, but that's actually not authentic to me. I'm not the kind of leader, and I never have been the kind of leader who wants to lead with a stick, to just beat my followers into submission, to beat the people who step out of line. That's never how I've led anything in my life.
Yeah, that wouldn't have worked for me.
And that's one of the reasons that you stood up early in this dynamic and said that you didn't want punishments to be a part of it.
Nope.
And that was actually a really good thing for me, because it made me look at, what does this actually mean to me? Because I always had this perception that, well, that's just what a dominant does. And you just nope that whole thing.
Yeah, that would have been a deal breaker for me.
And still to this day, 5 years later, we don't, like, our dominant submissive dynamic has no, we don't have punishments. You don't get punished for misbehaving or not following something that I ask of you.
Right.
So this all really falls under the umbrella for me of stepping into the role of being a dominant, especially early on, was disconnecting my attachment to anything that I thought being a dominant was supposed to mean, and showing up as just as a leader in this relationship.
Yeah, and I hear when you are talking about that, it's like you were either playing a role or it's a part of you. It's your characteristics that are, what I see, a natural part of you.
Yeah, and this has grown into something that we teach now, is that dominance has to come from within. It can't be something that you do. It has to be something that you are.
Yeah.
And the way that you show up in your relationship has to really be aligned with how you feel about yourself, and like who I feel that I am inside has to come first. Like, I have to sort my own shit out. I have to be dominant over my own weakness.
I'm going to just take a side note and say, from the submissive standpoint, it's not I don't feel like it's a role that I play. I believe it's also a part of who I am. And we don't need to go down that path, but I just wanted to say, like, both sides of that. Yes, you can jump into role play, but if you like living this the way we do, it is who we are, how we relate. And
yeah, and we'll do a whole episode about how this has been for you too. one of the things that really had to shift for me was that inner strength. Because as much as I was a leader in my life, I was a leader in business. I don't think there was a group that I was a part of that at some point I wasn't the chair of the board, the president of the organization. I always ended up finding myself in those positions. But there was still a disconnection in me, like inside, where at certain points it didn't really feel real. Like I was doing it. I was doing the stuff, and I had the titles, and I had the, my name on all the signs and the doors and plaques, but it didn't always feel authentic to me. And that really showed up when I was tasked now with leading this relationship. Because what I noticed really quickly is any time that I got angry or upset or frustrated or down, it affected you too.
Yeah.
Because as you started to look to me to lead, to be the decision maker, to be the one moving this relationship forward, and our lives forward, not just the relationship, but our whole lives. When I would fall apart, one of two things would happen. Either you would fall apart, or you would step right in and take over what was supposed to be my job now.
Yeah. That doesn't do anyone well.
And so that really that's another thing that had to shift for me, is I had to sort out, why do I collapse? Why do I fall apart? Why can't I speak up and lead how I want to lead? When there are things that I want, places I want to take us, there are things I want for us to do, directions I want for us to go, at times, and even still to this day sometimes, it's tough for me to speak up and just say it.
Or how about getting angry when things don't go your way?
Angry or
I don't just follow immediately. I don't just submit immediately. Back then.
Yeah, all of those, like having the inner strength to be okay regardless of how you are showing up or what your expression was. Like that was one of the things that really showed me how emotionally weak I really was. Start taking a couple of the layers off and looking at my own actions and how easy it was at some points to knock me off of my game just with a look from you. So what was it like for you, if you can remember this? I'm sure you can, because it's not like it never happens even anymore. It still happens at times. But what's it like for you when you feel me collapse, fall out of like standing strong in leading?
I remember back then, even like, it's hard to know early DS versus before, but looking back, like I would go into the fixer mode. I would go into trying to make you feel okay. Like, what do you need from me now? I'd feel bad for you.
Mm-hmm.
And without even realizing it back then, that would not make me want to fuck you.
No, just killed the sexual desire.
Yeah. But as a mom too, like I was in charge of myself and I was in charge of my kids. And so, like, single momming before we were together, and like, I think there's a natural part in a woman that we actually have to really own to not like be responsible for that. So that was a big challenge for me.
And this is another thing that had to shift in me, is all of the places that I went looking for that, where I wanted you to make me feel better.
Yeah.
Because
soothing something.
Right. Because there's the nurturing heart of a woman that when I have unhealed emotional stuff, when I have things that I haven't sorted out inside myself, and I'm looking to be soothed instead of to take responsibility and take ownership, there's no way that you're going to feel me in my strength if I'm like, I'm so sad and I want you to make me feel better.
You become another person for me to take care of. So you become like a child to me then.
Yeah.
In those moments without even realizing it.
Mm-hmm. And this gets at like, well, two different things. One, for me to really step into not just being a dominant, but really feeling like I was a dominant force in my life, I had to let go of everywhere that I saw myself as a victim. Everywhere that I saw myself as, well, let's say it this way. Everywhere that I went looking for pity from other people, you especially, rather than standing up and taking ownership for my life. Like I wouldn't have expected that being a dominant would require me to deal with so much stuff that had nothing to do with you and our relationship.
It's a whole new level of take 100% responsibility for your life.
Right.
And let's be real, emotional awareness is not a school subject.
No.
So
it takes something that makes us see and necessitates doing that work and sorting that stuff out. Especially for men, like we have to be blasted open somehow.
Yeah.
And so the other thing is like living at cause in my life. It's also on the theme of taking responsibility, but we either live at cause or we live at effect in our lives. Like I'm either the cause of the effects or I'm affected by what something else is causing. And of course I can't control every single variable of everything in our lives all the time.
No.
But in every place that I can be, I need to be at cause. I need to be the responsible party. The one who's steering the ship rather than the one who's riding on it.
Yeah, I kind of like the phrase like taking your life by the balls as a man.
Yeah. David Goggins says, can you find your balls? Good. Now grab them. All right, now go do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that when I really as a man looked at all of the ways that even though I felt like a leader, you looked at me as a leader, I was perceived in my community as a leader, all of the ways that I was living at effect. And like even in some of the ways that I would take on leadership roles, sometimes was because I wanted other people to look at me and see me as a leader. Like I wanted the emotional validation of that. I didn't do it because I wanted to make some positive impact on this organization or on this, in this group that asked me to be the chair of their board. I would do it because I wanted to be seen that way, because I was looking for a attaboy, sometimes from you. Like I wanted you to think positively about me. But in that case, then I'm living at effect. Like I'm waiting for you to do something.
Yeah, and it's also seeking validation for what you do versus even who you are.
Another thing that really had to change for me in embracing dominance and in coming into an authentic sense of dominance was, I mentioned this already a little bit before, but learning to speak up for what I want, even when it is uncomfortable, or even when what I want is going to conflict with what you want.
I will say this again. Thank goodness that you even spoke up for your desire of dominance and submission.
Yeah, we wouldn't be living this life
No.
if I hadn't. But there is a thing that I know that I did a lot. And that was to make my decisions based on what I thought would please you, so that I would then be able to experience you being happy with me.
And do you have more to elaborate on that? How that went for you?
I'm sure I could think of a lot of examples, but there was a real discomfort that I had with you not being pleased, with you not being happy. Because the fear in me is, if you're not happy, then I'm not going to have a good day. Because I wouldn't feel okay unless you were okay.
And like this isn't really a side note, but this kind of thing, these belief systems go all the way back to our childhood. Yeah. They're not just formed in our adult relationships.
No, they show up there.
That's exactly where they show up. So definitely the emotional work goes back to childhood.
But this role of like trying to please your partner as a man really does end up putting her in charge.
Yeah, and you didn't even realize it.
It's one of the things over the, now almost 5 years of this relationship, between this dominance and submission side of our relationship, that I've continually had to work on rooting out and getting rid of in myself, because it's a really, really deep pattern for me, and I know it has been for a lot of other men we've worked with too. It's like, how many different ways am I actually just trying to do what you want? But when I do that, you don't have anyone to follow.
Right. Honestly, though, that is a natural response as a child in this world of trying to navigate how to get the attention, making sure everybody's okay. It's that common, and that's why it takes a while to really unravel all the ways that you're doing it. It takes time and patience and a lot of awareness.
think one of the things that gets missed in this, and I know it did for me, was that when I try to please you, and I put you in the role of having to know what you want so you can tell me what you want so I can give you what you want so that you can give me what I want. There are so many unspoken agreements in that.
Yeah.
That it all fall back on my shoulders for abdicating the responsibility in the first place of saying, we're going to do this. Or I want it like this. And when I say unspoken agreements, otherwise known as covert contracts,
yeah,
I'm talking about the concept where I'm going to do this, and then you're going to do this for me.
I expect you to do this for me. Yeah.
Yep. But I don't tell you I expect you to do that for me. I'm
right.
just going to be upset if you don't.
Oh, I lived that way.
We both did that to each other a lot.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry too. One of the things we learned early in this dynamic was something called the hierarchy of needs and wants.
Yeah, you brought that forth.
Mm-hmm. And how that goes is your needs come first in this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If you are going to surrender to me and I'm going to lead you, you're going to let go of what you're going to let go and basically come with me instead of going where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm going to put your needs before mine because I have to look out for you. That's the trade. It's the exchange, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you really need something and I really need something, but you are going to be my submissive and you're going to follow me in life, then I need to subject my needs to yours. Because you've agreed not to just go do it yourself. But then in that is, after your needs are met and my needs are met, then I get what I want before you get what you want.
Yep.
And that is the crux of why it's so hard for somebody who is a pleaser, a man who's a pleaser, trying to step into the role of dominance, is they've played, and I had played that whole game backwards. Like, I'm going to give you everything you need and everything you want, hoping that you will then give me everything I need and everything I want. But I won't speak up for those things.
Yeah, without telling me your needs, you're hoping that I'm just going to know them.
Right. So.
And give them to you for that matter. Meet them.
It's something that I've come to call the vulnerability of dominance. Which is the vulnerability of leading without knowing that someone's going to follow you. To speak up for what you want and where you want to go. It sounds like it should be easy.
From the outside.
But when you have that little voice in your head saying over and over and over and over again, like, make her happy, or she's not going to be happy with you.
Yeah.
It feels extremely vulnerable for a man to say, we're going to do this. Especially if you go, no. Or no, we're not. Because all of our programming is like, oh shit, I upset her. Now everything is going to fall apart.
Yeah, relationships are a different complication there. Because I know, like, men in the business world, plenty of them are in leadership positions where it probably feels a lot easier to just be like, all right, this is the decision that needs to be made.
Yeah, it's way easier when love isn't involved.
Yeah.
Because love really does make us, it's wrapped up in everything that goes all the way back to our childhood and to our very earliest memories.
Yeah. Fear of losing what we love.
So that for me is one of the, and maybe the biggest thing that I've had to learn, and I continue to learn to this day, is how to just speak up for what it is that I want, and to be okay sometimes getting what I want even if you don't want it.
Yeah, and from my perspective, like, I've admired watching you evolve in that. I didn't know what I was missing in you, but feeling that come forth has I don't know, it's like something in me has been hit and opened up. I guess, like, it's a penetration from you to me energetically. But
well,
that...
Let's talk a little more about that, because as I have and still continue to grow into a stronger and stronger expression of my own authenticity, which really means like learning who the fuck I really am, mm-hmm. and then being okay being that, even if it's not popular in the moment. As I've grown more into that, like, what does that feel like to you, to witness me being the way that I feel inside of myself, which is kind of bulletproof, in charge of my own life? I continue to feel more and more like I'm, like, nothing really gets to me. In a way that's, like, upsets me. What's it like for you to experience me being able to stand in that, like, in that kind of energy, even when shit's going haywire?
So let me just go back to this whole covert contract thing first, because when you were showing up in that way, I felt something gross. Like, I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't even know what was going on. I didn't have the language of that, but it was a neediness.
Right.
And it was a turnoff. But also I was unconsciously, like, in that role of trying to figure out what's going on here and what do you need, because there was this knowing that you were trying to get something from me. Mm-hmm. And that would make my walls go up, like, oh hell no, without even realizing it again, because I still loved you and I didn't know what was going on emotionally on my part. And so having that experience with you, and then seeing you evolve into something else of this strength and man who doesn't collapse, who doesn't come across as needy, like, it was like, oh fuck yes, oh happy day, like, well, like, oh. I don't even have a lot of language to put to it. I'm telling you that it was a felt experience in my body. When of good. Like
I witnessed you, like, just being relaxed. Like, it helped you calm down,
yes,
a lot of the nervous energy that you used to carry around.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was easier to follow you, because you came across as confident and sure. And, you know, I had all the other history and trust and love with you already, so it's not like that was just 2 months into our relationship.
And I came across as confident and sure. But what's really important is I actually was confident and sure.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it was different. Like, I witnessed you in this, what I thought was confident and sure before, but this was a whole different level.
Right, because now, like, it became real.
It is very real now.
Where before it was an act that I put on.
Yep. And
I tried to paint over all of the insecurity that I felt inside.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting is you said something there that 5 years ago probably would have triggered the fuck out of me. Just in calling me weak.
Yep.
Because I couldn't admit that I was weak. I couldn't look at that in myself. And so if you happened to notice it and said anything about it or even hinted at it, like, I would just fall apart. And like, now we can talk about, it's one of the ways that I know that everything is so different for us, is I can just hear you talk about even things that I've done in the past that have been very hurtful to you. And they don't set me off.
Yeah, that, from my part, that was a really hard thing to even bring up anything that I wasn't happy about.
Oh, because I punished you for that.
Well, you were, I knew you were words of affirmation lover, right? Like, words of affirmation just fill you up. And so I recognize that if I bring words that I would wrap up, like, I would say them in as pretty fashion as I possibly could, but I knew that they were gonna hurt or affect you, because they would have affected me too. Like, if someone said it to me, it was hard. And so what I would do was shut down.
Yeah, you just wouldn't speak up.
And
I trained you not to by the way that I would punish you for speaking up.
Exactly. And not like punish, but like, you emotionally, it would be hard. You didn't take ownership for anything of what I wanted to bring. Not initially. It took a little while of like uncomfortable emotional mess for probably days at a time.
One of the things that this relationship helped me see was how important it was that I don't fall apart when you're looking to me to hold you up. Because if I fall apart, then so do you.
Yeah.
And, we've talked before about, like, I've did a lot of EMDR therapy, done a lot of meditation. I've done a lot of work to let go of the things I was carrying around with me that were affecting the way that I acted, that were affecting me and how I showed up. Because I needed to. But there really is something to, there's a sense of strength that I think men miss out on, that I know I never really even knew was available. And that's the sense of inner strength you have when you can't be triggered. When you can't be, like, nothing will set me off now. It's very different than what you were saying just a minute ago. Like, you can tell me anything and you don't even have to try to be nice about it. You're not going to piss me off. You're not going to make me angry. You're not going to make me fall apart. Not very often. And if you do, that's on me. It's not on you for, like...
Yeah, and you own that now. I've witnessed that.
I completely own that. Because if you can't follow me if you're worried about upsetting me.
Right.
What would you even be following? Like, you're just stuck in trying to package yourself up and present yourself in a way that doesn't upset me.
And for me, that is fucking exhausting.
Right.
Like, it's no way to live for anybody. And you're trying to morph yourself into something you're not. So, like, living authentically means all the way.
Yeah. And if I want you to surrender to me fully, which let's be real, dominance and submission is about, I mean, for us, it's about how far can we go down the road of me leading and you following, because every step we've gone has just gotten better. And at this point, it's like, let's see how good this can get.
Yeah, looking back, it's like, why couldn't I do all of this at once? Because you had work to do and I had a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm. It's been a lot of work on both of our parts, but it really does fall on the leader first. I think that's one of the biggest points that I've learned is, for you, for a woman who is naturally submissive, who's a follower, who wants to be taken care of, I can basically have what I want in this relationship if I can be strong enough to lead us into it, to speak up, to ask for it. I can have almost anything I want if I'm strong enough to make it happen.
Right.
And we get into these kind of relationships, like I said at the beginning of this, I knew if you followed me, if you go where I want to go, I'm going to use all of that to make both of our lives better. But then every time that I tripped over my own 2 feet, we're not going anywhere.
Right. There's one other thing that you've dramatically grown in, and that's impulsivity.
Talk about that a little more.
Well, I think there's maybe some to talk about what you experienced in yourself first.
Well, I had a tendency to be extremely impulsive, especially in certain areas of life.
The Ariana Grande song is coming into my head. I want it, I bought it.
Right. And that was the biggest area. It was like, and this is a pattern I learned from my father. Like, I have a new hobby, a new interest. I'm going to go spend all of the money and buy all of the things to prepare me to pursue this hobby that I'm going to get bored with in 6 months and then move on from.
Yep.
And start a new hobby.
Yep. And I've witnessed that in you over and over and over, and other ways.
There were lots and lots and lots of decisions I would make for the benefit of the moment without thinking it through.
Exactly.
How has that changed? How have you seen that change in me?
I don't really have a lot of words to put to it other than it's dramatically different. The way you can articulate even like what you've all considered, because let's be real, there's been a time where I needed, like, my sense of uncertainty and was seeking more safety. And so there was a time where you maybe over-explained what all went into making this decision, for my soothing. And so, but that showed me your like due diligence, your intellect, your ability to slow down and think things through and figure them out, and like actually make the decisions that are well thought out and for the best of us, not the way you used to be in the moment by chaos. Like you're grounded in them now.
Yeah, so it's been almost an unforeseen benefit of all of the other work that I've done and all of the other growth that I've gone through.
Yeah.
Is when I see everything in our lives as my responsibility, then it forces me to look at everything big picture.
Yeah. And I witnessed that in you.
And a big part of taking that level of responsibility has been that for me, I also am taking responsibility for the ramifications of my decisions, for the downstream effects of the things that I do now, in a way that I didn't before, because I would just do what I want now and I'll figure it out later.
And that doesn't create a sense of safety in me.
Right. You then are witnessing a partner who is
flying by the seat of his pants.
Yeah, going with the flow and not thinking things through, like really not being present with all of the effects of the decisions that I would make.
It's a lack of taking full ownership.
Right. And so it's the responsibility thing that really led to getting that impulsivity under control. Because now, if anything, I can even tend to be a little too measured sometimes. I'll err on the side of wait and figure it out and just make sure. Which is necessary if I want you to be the one who's more in the impulsivity. Because that's really more the role of the feminine, and in this case of the submissive, to be in the energy of what can be. And you can't be there if you don't know that I've got the big picture where I can let you play in the playground of life.
So I'm not gonna get into too much of my side. Maybe we will, just because of what you said, what you talk about. But that brings me to another thing about just self-discipline. You would admire my self-discipline. When I said I was going to do something, I did it. And
that was not something that I had available to me.
And it put us in the opposite roles.
Right. Well, and there's no place that played out more so than in my body and in fitness and in the way that I presented myself and the way that I looked physically. And there's nowhere that I was more insecure than that too, because God help you if you even mentioned how fat I was.
What I brought up fearing to express before, yeah, that was it.
That was it. Well, there's nowhere that I was harsher on you for speaking what felt real to you.
Well, and you put on weight from the time we got married, and then you put on the weight, right? So it wasn't like, I don't know, it felt like a bait and switch in a way, right?
Yeah. And I was 60, 70, 80 pounds heavier than I was when we got married.
Yeah, I don't know, but
5 or 6 years after we got married.
Yeah.
I knew it. I wasn't any happier with it than you were. But I lacked so much self-discipline
Yep.
I lacked the ability to do something about it. Like I just couldn't make myself.
You'd start and you'd stop.
Yep.
Over and over and over again.
And you know,
And that's what I'd witness in you.
And I thought it was about exercise, but it really was a discipline thing. Because
Exactly.
that same thing played out in plenty of other areas in my life. Because I've always been the type of person who has enough intelligence and capability and charisma that I can kind of wing my way through things if I need to. Like I can just figure it out and make shit work. But that doesn't work in things that require discipline, where you have to show up. You have to like not eat the French fries, dude.
Yeah.
At least not every day. And so that was like a big area that I know you witnessed me lacking self-discipline.
Yeah, because it was a huge area of self-discipline for me.
Right. And that was the flip side, is how rigid you were with yourself, probably because of how non-rigid I was. You know, maybe somewhere down there is a covert contract. Like if I get myself in good enough shape, then maybe you will too.
Possibly. But that was one thing where I wouldn't like what was happening, but then I would maybe try to bring it up, and like it never went well.
No.
Never went well. And I mean, I get it.
And so, you know, in those situations, a lot of traditional advice would be well-meaning, but really not all that actually helpful, because the answer is, like the only answer was I had to develop a sense of inner strength and an ability to get myself to take action. I knew I was fat. Like it was no secret to me.
The mental battle that I went through was wanting you to be sexier, for one.
Mm-hmm.
But then you would also hear people say of like, love him as he is. Love him as he is. Like, not specifically, but that's the idea. Like, you're married. Like, love him as he is.
Right.
And I was like, but I'm less physically attracted. And so that was like a big contradiction in me that created a lot of emotional turmoil.
Yeah. And that, like, developing that ability to have discipline, to follow through on what I say that I'm going to do, to have integrity.
I was going to bring that up next.
Like that really is the thing that allowed me to get in shape and allowed me to become fit and to have a fit body and to feel confident in it, not only in the body but in my ability to know that I can affect my own life, because I like now possess that sense of self-discipline. Mm-hmm. And that is dominance. Like that feels like authentic dominance, because I feel very in control of my life, where before I felt very out of control of my life.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect example of why the caricature of the dominant being like just the one who bosses the woman around, like, okay, great, but not until you get your own shit in line inside, buddy. Like she's not going to, maybe outside of a kink scene, a short term, like maybe a relationship that's only kink in the bedroom, it's only dom sub in the bedroom. Mm-hmm. Like, that's one thing, because you can just shut it off and then go about your life.
Yeah, it's the role play.
If you want this as a part of the way that you live your life, you like the dominance has to be present in my being, and it has to be the way that I live my life in order for you to be able to soften into it and to follow me. And that's why, you know, one of the least popular things I've ever said on our Instagram account was that dominant men need to be fit, in shape, well groomed, well dressed. And I don't think I've ever been flamed more. But it's true, not because it's about the looks, even though it is. It's about the inner discipline to care enough and to follow through and to actually be the man that you want to be, instead of being a caricature of it, or playing the role of it and just looking that way or acting that way. Really actually being it.
Yeah, like as I'm hearing you talk about that, I'm like, what came to my mind is taking weight loss advice from a fat doctor. Like, that doesn't work. So,
or never trust a skinny chef.
Yeah, that's a little different. So yeah, that one also came to my mind, but that's just a saying. Like, I mean, but it's somewhat true. Like, if I received advice from someone and I'm sensing a lack of integrity and follow through in yourself, I can't take that advice. I can't take that leadership. I can't give you that dominant role over my life.
It's not going to feel safe for you to submit.
No.
To follow something that is just, it's not real. It's just a facade.
So, like, what I have to say is, like, where I'm at today, very different place than I was when you asked me to be your submissive, is no doubt proof of the man that you've become. No doubt proof that you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about, and you've led me here. So your ability to see what needs to be seen in me, like, it shows me your connection to the consciousness of God, of truth, that you've tapped into on your own journey here.
And so there's no better place to end this conversation than on integrity.
It's a big one.
Because it really does encompass everything.
Mm-hmm.
And for the masculine, and this is where we can't separate dominance and submission from polarity, from masculine feminine dynamics. For the masculine, integrity is a very different thing than integrity for the feminine. We'll get into that another time. But for me to live in integrity means that I am who I say that I am. I do the things I say that I'll do. I follow through on my promises. I keep my commitments. My word is solid. That there is no difference between the man that I am here with you, the man that I am when people listen to this podcast, watch what I publish on the internet, when I coach people, when I show up in my family, and when I'm alone, in the dark, in the quiet, in my private moments when no one's watching. Am I exactly the same man?
I know you are now.
Very, very, very few people, I think, can really truly say that they're exactly the same person all the way through their life. And it's one of the things that I am constantly on the lookout for as a sign of anything being out of line in my life. Anything that feels like I have a secret, anything that feels like I'm needing to be sneaky, is a sign that I'm out of integrity, because I'm trying to hide something about myself. And I know that it doesn't matter even if I have a little secret that you don't know about. And this isn't about like keeping secrets necessarily, but if I'm not the same over here as I am with you, It's going to show up in how I interact with you, in how I look at you, in how I speak to you, in how I pay attention to you. You're going to feel that even if you don't know that it's there. It's going to show up, and it's going to be obvious, even if it's completely unobvious what it is. But the only way that we know that is when I improve, or when I go backwards and something's just different with us.
Yeah.
And so for my money, there's no bigger piece of growth, and no thing that I've done better and paid more attention to in this last 4.5 years of growing into being your dominant than paying conscious and attention to my integrity and making it the highest priority in my own inner world.
Thank you for that.
Because you wouldn't be able to follow me in the way that you do. I think it's a sliding scale. Like, your ability to submit, to surrender, to follow is equal to the amount of integrity that I have in my inner world. That invisible integrity, just the felt sense of the man that I am.
Absolutely it is.
So those are some of the biggest things for me that I've had to change as a man in order to really be authentically dominant. And again, if you went back to when dominance was this twinkle in my eye, it was this fantasy that I had held in my secret life, and that out of integrity part of, like, quiet dark corner of my life that I had hidden my desire for this. In fantasy world, you don't think about the importance of your integrity. You aren't thinking about the value of getting over all of the things that trigger you. You don't think about the importance of your self-discipline and your fitness and your appearance and your body. You don't think about your emotional health. But those are the things that actually make dominance real for me. And in how I see it in you, what makes submission possible for you.
Absolutely.
I've enjoyed this conversation.
Yes. Thank you.